Hey friends, welcome back. So today I'm going to share with you some of my favorite notions that I had wished I had known about when I started out my quilting journey. And these are some of my favorites. I have quite a few favorites, but these are probably my top 10 that I would consider my tools that I use the most frequently when I'm working on projects. So number one are clips. I discovered these when I was making a bag for a quilt class that I was going to go to, and so I could carry all my quilting supplies in. And these were really nice. They really held things together, and it really saved a lot with the pins, and especially when things like when you're working with a bag and stuff, clips just are a little easier and you're not poking yourself with pins, and it just holds things together a little bit better. So my first item is clips. Now number two is pins. Now, when I first started quilting, I was using those old metal pins and they weren't really kind to my hands. And I discovered some of these longer quilting pins that I use quite a bit. And then I've also discovered some of these heat resistant ones recently that are very fine that I really like as well. So, and then I found some other ones that have some fun tops. So I learned that not all pins are created equal, and to take some time and go to your local quilt shop or online and kind of just explore and look at some other pins that might be a little bit kinder to your hands, as well as to help you a little bit more when you're putting your projects together. Number three is my magnetic pin cushion. Now this is really nice, so when I keep it next to my machine, and then as I'm sewing and if I'm using pins and I pull them out, they just clip right onto here and I don't have to worry about them falling onto the floor and then eventually stepping on them, or one of my dogs when they're in my studio getting hurt. So this is really a handy tool, and this is one of my favorites. Number four is kind of a combo deal. I love my seam ripper from Clover, but really the favorite of here is my cork. And this is just something I had laying around the house. And the reason it's my favorite is I keep this next to my machine in my stasher, and when I'm done with my seam ripper, I just poke it in here, and this is where my seam ripper lives. And I have a few corks around my studio for my seam rippers, and I just poke it in there. So that's a really handy thing to have. Now, this is another favorite tool, is my half square triangle rulers. And these are called clearly slotted trimmers. And these are wonderful. They come in half size and whole sizes. And you lay it on your half square triangle before you open it up. And you trim off the dog ears as well as trim it to size. And then you can open it up and press it. And I really like that because you're trimming all sides at one time with these rulers. So these are another favorite of mine, the clearly slotted trimmers. Then my next favorite, again, is also kind of a little bit of a combo deal, is my 2.5 by 6 ruler, which I have a few of these and I use this all the time. I like it because it's little and it kind of gets the job done most of the time for most of my quilting projects. And then this one is my 1/4 inch ruler. And this is nice when you're making half square triangles and you need to lay it down corner to corner to draw your lines, your 1/4 inch lines. So this is really handy versus having to measure everything. This is a great little tool and is one of my favorites. Marking tools. When I started out, I just simply was using a pencil. That's kind of what I had learned using growing up. And then I discovered marking tools. I discovered chalk. But these are probably my two favorites here. One is my friction pen, which is heat erasing. And this one I probably use the most. And then I also use this water soluble one. And I like this one because it has a really fine point on it. So when you're drawing a line, it's a lot more exacting. See, these are probably my two favorites. And the reason I kind of go back and forth is on the lighter fabrics, You need to be a bit careful with the heat erasing friction pens because sometimes it'll show through later on the fabric. So that's why I kind of switch between the two, depending on what kind of fabric I'm using. The next thing I learned about was needles. Now I knew that there was different kinds of needles for machines and whatnot, but I discovered the Schmetz Microtex needles. And they're very fine and they go through your fabric a lot cleaner and makes for a cleaner seam on your project. The other thing I learned about, and I talked about this in my first video, Wish Upon a Quilt, I talked about discovering and switching to gray thread. But also when I switched to gray thread, I had switched over to using 100% cotton threads, and using Aurifel is one of my favorite threads. There's several other good quality quilting threads out there, but I discovered Aurifel, and this is what I tend to use the most of. And for my piecing, I use the 50 weight. So you do have to, when you're looking at thread, need to pay attention to the weight of the thread that you're using. The next item are scissors. Now, again, I kind of thought scissors were all created equal, and they are for the most part, but these little Karen Buckley ones I discovered, a friend had these, and I have these little green ones, and I got a pair, and I thought, oh my goodness, they are a little bit on the pricey side, but they are so nice, and hopefully you can probably look around and get them on sale. But I have these little green ones. These are some of my favorite. And then the blue ones are really nice. And then the larger size in the purple. So these are really nice as well. So there are some of my favorite scissors. And then the last thing was such a game changer when I was putting together my projects is when I learned about design boards. And I made this for a class that I was taking. This saved so much time. I was constantly taking things to the machine and then sew them together, and things got all mixed up going from my cutting board over to the machine. And when I made these design boards and I could just carry the pieces over, it saved so much time because I didn't have to rip stuff out anymore. So these are really handy and they're really easy to make. Number 10 is design boards. So I hope by sharing some of my favorite notions that will help you in your quilting journey. But for now, I wish you well, and most of all, be quilty.